Hey, Guyanese, hey, what make me so stupid? I wonder. Guyanese like myself, yes. Why we so foolish? I'm not gonna tell you. Imagine we put the leaders there in the government and gone we back from them like we don't care how taxpayers' money spent. With all the corruption that taking place, we is the ones we blame. While them are thief. We just sit down like if we lame. But this God don't sleep. No, he don't sleep. By the time I done sing make I so, I know you're gonna agree with me that he don't sleep. Jehovah not sleep. One day the same bad seed that them sow, it's that they're gonna reap. Under this party, politicians thieving at will. Under this party, them not care, they're doing it still. Under this party, all the big contracts are go to them friend. Under this party, them forgetting the longest rope of an end. But if we the people can come together and stand up for what is right, put aside we indifference and start unite. Politicians would know them damn place and work with honesty. Then boom, Guyana would rise and have a vibrant economy. Hey! Hey, Guyanese, hey, what make me so stupid? I wonder. Guyanese like myself, yes. Why we so foolish? I'm not gonna tell you. Imagine we put the leaders there in the government and gone we back from them like we don't care how taxpayers' money spent. With all the corruption that taking place, we is the ones we blame. While them are thief. We just sit down like if we lame. But this God don't sleep. No, he don't sleep. By the time I done sing make I so, I know you're gonna agree with me that he don't sleep. Jehovah not sleep. One day the same bad seed that them sow, it's that they're gonna reap. Under this party, politicians thieving at will. Under this party, them not care, they're doing it still. Under this party, all the big contracts are go to them friend. Under this party, them forgetting the longest rope of an end. But if we the people can come together and stand up for what is right, put aside we indifference and start unite. Politicians would know them damn place and work with honesty. Then boom, Guyana would rise and have a vibrant economy. Ding dang diddy diddy do dang dunga day. Oh, dee da dee da ding ding diddy 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 do dang dunga day. Oh, da 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 do. Guyanese.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins firm.
All right away, let's begin. Let's get ready to rumble. And straight up, it's 7 minutes after 9 o'clock. And we usually say in beautiful Georgetown, Guyana. That's where we're broadcasting from, 107.1 FM. We have our guests this evening, no strangers to you guys at all. In fact, some of you have been asking for the gentleman at the bottom. So I had to steal him away from his family. He has been busy. Unlike Apostle London, he's not driving a truck, but I say that with good intention, that those of you who know Apostle London out in Linden, he is driving a truck now. If you have any sand or whatever it is, people got to make a living. So go out and support Apostle London. But it's not Apostle London, it's Sharma Solomon. He's back with us this evening. But guess who is back with us? The guy who says it all, says some things, says kind of, we don't know what he says in a good way, is Tom Anderson. He's back with me. There are a few folks who say, Mark, Tom says a lot, but sometimes we don't know what he says because he says a lot. And I say this because people are trying to figure out, they know that you're onto something, they know what you're saying, but Tom is laughing, Tom is smiling. Tom and Sharma, good evening to you guys.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Tom. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, good to see you, Sharma. Good to see you, man.
Same here.
Here's the secret. I've been asking for you. So if anyone wants to know, I'm the guy who's been asking, just so you know.
Yeah,
exactly. So here is what
Mark didn't know about the trenches. So what though on air, every now and then it's good to take some time away and go down into the trenches and do some trench work, against the trench crapos, Mark.
Exactly.
I'm glad that Tom is not going to ask us. Look, it's Friday, right? I'm glad that Tom is not going to ask us the definition of trench crapos. Not tonight, Tom.
No, I've already seen enough of that, so I'm good. I'm good.
Indeed. All right, here's what we're going to begin with. Look, I know Facebook has been giving us some kind of a rough time. People have not been notified, all manner of things. But you know what we do here on 107.1 FM? We just get straight down to business, man. We know whatever the problem is with Facebook, hopefully sometime soon it will be rectified. But we thank you so much for sharing the link, guys. Let's get straight into business. Let's start off with Tom Anderson. Tom, again, thanks for being on with us this evening. You see there's a Vice News reporter, the journalist, Isabella, and then we have Bara Jagdeo. It has been a while now. Jagdeo said he wants an investigation. Well, we already know that it's a bluff. Irfan Ali says that he wants an investigation. Again, it's a bluff. That has been several weeks now. No investigations at all into allegations leveled against Bara Jagdeo, bribery, fraud, all manner of corruption. Are you surprised, Mr. Anderson, that there is no investigations thus far?
I mean, I'm not surprised, but at the same time, maybe I'm getting close to being surprised, right? Because at some point, there has to be an investigation, no matter how this goes. There has to be an investigation. So It's going to happen sooner rather than later, most likely, because the longer time that it takes for this to happen, the more likely the thing that occurs that most politicians don't want to have to happen, which is it's not the crime that they get in trouble with, it's the cover up, right? So if there's any kind of cover up going on and then there's an investigation, well, then people might forget about a little bit of this, but when there's a cover up, it makes it so much worse. So they probably want to have an investigation sooner rather than later. They're going to have one. So I'm surprised that I'm kind of not surprised, but at the same time, I'm getting close to surprised because it's going to have to happen. And it should be happening pretty soon, in my opinion.
Yeah, and folks have been calling for an international probe into this whole thing. How optimistic about an international? Because we're not seeing the local law enforcement doing anything at all. And I would be surprised if there's any international investigations, maybe unless the ABC countries decide to pull the plug on this guy, the visa plug, and all sort of other restrictions. Maybe see some of his bank accounts and so forth, if he has any. And we have been hearing certain things. But your take, Tom, before we get to Mr. Solomon.
Well, I think more than likely, the international community is going to stay away from the issue for this reason. Imagine if they try to get involved, even if they have an investigation done, right? Or they back an investigation happens. Maybe they might think that no matter what the results are, people won't be happy, right? So there's a chance that you step in as an international organization, you come in as another country, you help the situation out by pushing for an investigation. Everyone now knows that you've pushed for it and it's happening because of you. And when the investigation happens, it comes out that people think it's a cover up or something, right? And then now whoever that is in the international community who stuck their neck out, they're going to look like they're part of the corruption. So that's why I'm telling you, like, they're going to have their own internal. This is going to have to be a Guyanese investigation to begin with. It's probably going to happen sooner rather than later, because what's going to happen here is, like I said before, the last time I was on the show, other world leaders are not going to want to be in the same picture with someone in a country who's on tape being questioned the way that Jack Dale was being questioned by a prominent war correspondent, a journalist that really knows her job. And she had recordings and she had proof, so that's scandalous for most politicians around the world. When there's a camera rolling, they don't want to be anywhere around that. And so they're gonna have to have the investigation, because other leaders aren't going to want to be in the same photograph with these guys until an investigation is done and they clear this up, in my opinion.
All right, we got you, Tom Anderson, here with us this evening. A beautiful Friday evening. Let's go to Mr. Sharma Solomon. Mr. Solomon, your take. Thus far, no investigations. Nobody has approached law enforcement agency, particularly the agency that deals with that, SOCU. Instead, we are hearing that motion or some sort of some filing has been made, presented to the clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Sherlock Isaacs. I'm not sure how far that's going to go, but let's get your take on the reluctance of any sort of investigations on the part of the regime.
Well, Mark, let me say first that let me commend you. You said that no one so far would have approached SOCU. Mark Benchcap did. And I think even as an individual, that is commendable that we have persons at your level and others who are paying attention and are prepared to get the local law enforcement involved. You have to, I think what Tom is saying, is to hold local law enforcement accountable, but not taking for granted the sort of pressure that this government recognized that they will face. Take, for example, the GCOM situation and the investigations into the 2020 elections. Both the vice president and the president, even the commissioner, the GCOM commissioner, chair, had declined to even consider having any sort of investigation. But I believe the sort of commitments that were made, that they have to satisfy certain fulfillments of requirements to be seen as legitimate in the international community, you're seeing this sort of approach. So I believe even though there is a sort of pandering by the vice president and the president to ask for investigation, not of corruption in the dealings of the vice president, be specific, but the issue of money laundering. I think it is only then we heard the call for any investigations into corruption. And then you saw compounded today, or in fact, in the National Assembly recently, the speaker turning down such a request for any sort of view into any investigations of corruption. So I believe what you're seeing is, as with GCOM, every effort that is being made to figure out how to approach to look legitimate to have an investigation. However, I believe that investigation will have to start with the local authorities, and that is where the real issue lies. Because then you have to come out of this looking good, and there is no way, based on what is occurring from the Vice report and from all that is taking place, money laundering, corruption, it's not going to look good. But I believe they're under pressure to make sure that something happened, and this is why you're seeing the call for an investigation.
You know, I'm looking at, and thanks for reminding that back in March, on March 4th, as a matter of fact, I did approach SOCU asking them to investigate this matter. SOCU head, Superintendent Karim Baksh, has refused to take my calls. He has promised to return my calls on several occasions. And this was way back in March when we first heard of these allegations of bribery and other forms of corruption that were leveled against Barajactio. Nobody seemed to, a lot of our politicians seem to have been fast asleep at the wheels. Some said that they were waiting for the Vice News to come out. And I don't know what sort of politician would wait until a Vice News and you already heard what is happening. But thus far, nothing at all. None of these politicians, even those in the opposition, have not approached the relevant law enforcement agency, which is SOCU. But I've noticed comments from some folks seem to not have confidence in the local law enforcement agencies. And I could understand why, including SOCU. Now, does that pose a problem, Mr. Anderson, that where there is no confidence in the local law enforcement agencies to conduct any sort of investigations?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what, as I've said in previous shows, one of the best things that could be done for Guyana is for the politicians in place to take serious local level law enforcement, local level bureaucracy, local level government, right? That's where everything starts. When you talk about politics in the United States, politics is local. Everything is local. Government has to start off local. It has to. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pressure here. And I'm not surprised that no one locally wants to take this on, because it's almost like a suicide job as far as your career goes. There's no way for you to win, because if you do a great job and you make someone in power look really, really bad, well, then you're in trouble. And if you don't do a good job, well, everyone in the country is going to look at you like, what are you doing? So it's a lose-lose. And so right now it's like a hot potato. Who's going to end up with it in their lap is the question.
Hot potato, indeed. One of the other
Right?
things I want to get back to you, Mr. Anderson, is how the international community looking into this here. And one particular thing that is interesting, I want to get your opinion on. But before we get to that, let me ask Mr. Solomon about the mistrust of local law enforcement agencies, whether you share that same opinion that they can conduct an impartial investigation into this matter.
Mark, the culture of the Guyana Police Force and the culture of many of the bureaucratic agencies, especially the coercive sector of this state, is one where people have absolutely no trust in. And that is the culture. And that culture stems from the structural arrangements and the structural approach that the government is taking towards building these institutions. Look at the Guyana Police Force today. The Commissioner of Police is questionable, active. The structure itself is before the court that a deputy or in fact, an assistant commissioner of police could question the police service commission. There are persons who are holding ranks in the police force who are not certain if they will maintain that sort of morale, the structural composition and putting together of the Guyana police force, the sort of way that the government is treating that coercive sector builds the sort of culture that we are seeing today, not only in one where people trust the investigative skills of the Guyana police force, but their ability to serve and to protect. And this is where you see issues such as Quindon Bacchus and the following of the opposition leader. That sort of culture is creating in the society a place where people have little or no trust because of the structural composition and the way the government is managing the Guyana police force. So, quite correct, Mark. But however, you have to start ensuring that they are held accountable by putting before them these very tough cases so that people will know that persons are paying attention, not only locally, and this is why I keep mentioning that as much as local pressure is building right after the Vice News interview, and you found the opposition putting some pressure on it, there is a lot of international. Guyana entered the realm of international stardom. You cannot have the level of corruption that makes a sitting government looks illegitimate, that this government cannot afford to pay serious attention to issues like what they did with the elections in terms of an investigation and what you see they're doing with the calls for investigation into corruption. So the Guyana police force is going to be under tremendous pressure, notwithstanding the sort of culture that they've inherited through the structural putting together of the force.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot because the Guyana police force itself becomes questionable there before the court, as you have said, Mr. Solomon, to argue whether the acting commissioner of police has been appointed legally or not. So that's up with a big question mark. Lots of other senior officers who were promoted, question marks as well. Soku head, question marks as well. I don't know what's happening. Lots and lots of question marks. I know, Tom, you have done a lot of investigations in corrupt governments, corrupt politicians, even in the United States of America. Is this an unusual case we're seeing here in Guyana?
No, it's not unusual. I mean, the unusual part is there seems to be, like Mr. Sharma is saying, there seems to be no legitimate mechanism within government to deal with this, right? And so that's the part that's pretty shocking, because every functional government in the world, even, I mean, unless it's a dictatorship, right? But if it's a truly functional government, parliamentary government, there's going to be some type of government function that can handle this work, right? Where, because what happens is you have to have some type of leadership step up in this situation and take charge. And that can only happen. I'm sure there are individuals who can lead such an investigation within Guyana right now. But the problem is you have to have the government structure in place to allow that person the authority they need to step up to the plate and show leadership. And what Mr. Sharma is saying pretty clearly is there just seems to not be the fundamental structure needed to put, the government power and force behind an individual to step up and be a leader and lead this thing and do a proper job where the people in the country can respect the outcome of it, whatever it may be. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of this is speculation, right? No one knows. It's all dark. And so you still have to hear internationally, everyone internationally, pretty much from my sector of the world, will consider Jack Dale innocent until proven guilty. Okay, he's innocent, and so he gets his chance. Now, if there's no
and not to cut you, in other parts of the world, he is guilty until he proves himself innocent, because we have lots of individuals who came, who were recorded. We heard them The evidence is there. According to them, they are business people. They said this is what they do to survive in Guyana. They have to pay bribe. They have to do this. All levels of corruption. These are the people who are saying that they have done X, Y, and Z. But yet the Guyana Police Force have not, or SOCU, have not gone after to question, to let us see that they have been questioning these individuals. Invite them into SOCU. You claim that you have committed a crime. We want to get to the bottom of this. We're not even seeing that. We're not even seeing that they are after Sue. We don't even know where Sue is. So for now, Jagdeo is considered, and I understand where you're coming from, Tom, but for now, Jagdeo is considered guilty until he can prove himself innocent. He says he wants to prove himself through a probe. Irfan Ali says they want a probe, but they're the ones who are humbugging a probe. If they really want a probe, they should call SOCU head and say, hey, here is Jagdeo. We are going to ask Jagdeo to resign until the end of this investigations. The fact of the matter that they're not heading in that direction seems to suggest that they're not serious, that they're mamagaying the Guyanese people. They're fooling the Guyanese people, and they're hoping that these allegations will just fade away into the wind. Mr. Solomon said that the opposition is mounting some sort of pressure. I don't see that pressure coming from the opposition, other than they walked into the chief clerk's office and say, we want Parliament to investigate it. And then the very day or the next day, guess what? This guy, a PPP guy, Tom, he is the Speaker of the National Assembly. He said, no, we are not going to entertain any debate on corruption. Is that the sort of pressure you're talking about, Mr. Solomon, that has been mounted by the opposition?
More pressure, Mark. That's what we probably need. But it is, like I said, we must recognize in the early 2000s, it was the same institutions. And I want us to appreciate that we have to let these institutions work. Whether it's the parliament, whether it's the courts, the police force, it was in the killing spree of people in high-profile position, including the then Minister of Home Affairs, Ronald Gadraj, that we had to use those same institutions, whether it was a commissioner of police in Winston Felix, who used the force for the good of the nation to ensure that we rid those drug barons and a corrupt government of politicians that were using elements of the state to kill citizens.
But you know what? You know what, Mr. Solomon? Let's stick a pin there. There were some institutions of the state that were aiding and abetting that corrupt PPP regime. The DPP chambers, some members of the judiciary, lots of senior police officers.
But we were still reliant on
one second, please. 1 second. And that pressure came as a result of who was sitting in Duke Street at that time. They had Roland Bullen, U.S. ambassador to Guyana. And then after he was chased out of Guyana, so to speak, he was threatened and all manner of things. Then you had John Jones. He also mounted that pressure. The point that I'm making, if we depend on these local agencies in Guyana, we wouldn't get justice. Nothing will happen.
Mark, I started
when the U.S. and the ABC countries decided to step in.
I started the conversation by talking about both domestic and international politics intersecting to give us the sort of pressure that we need. So, but it takes also the domestic approach. Now, you and I are making the same point. You can't ask for the opposition to be aggressive. That's domestic. You can't ask the people to be more holding the government accountable. That's domestic. The international community wants to see that aggression, wants to see the system and the structures be tested. Think about this. For this reason that we have not so far heard about the TORs for the investigations into the 2020 elections, because the government have found itself in a position where it cannot just throw up any TORs. You've called commissioners over a month ago, and have not given them the TORs to go into looking into the 2020 elections. Now, why do you think that is so? Because it is hard for them to take these esteemed people and give them any sort of TORs the way they did the 18th of July, when we had those men that could not have escaped even the shabby TORs and still found the police guilty of killing people in Linden. It is the same conundrum that the government finds itself in at this moment to come out from, to show that it was not culpable in the 2020 elections. It's the same situation when you test those domestic structures like the Guyana Police Force, and they have to go after investigating our officials, when they have to give them the mandate, as Tom is saying, you will find it difficult for people to want to step up and do their job fairly, but we have to test those structures, man.
Those structures have their rotten ropes, Mr. Solomon. With all due respect, we have seen it before. If we sit and wait that the structures are going to be doing things in terms of ensuring that there's justice for the Guyanese people, those structures themselves are rotten. They're rotten ropes. They're a bunch of wood ants occupying that. They're a bunch of corrupt individuals. Now, the only time that we saw some... The only time we saw things
before the judiciary.
The only time that we saw things moving was when the U.S. and other people start to step in, revoke visas. They revoked many commissioners of police visas. They revoked ministers' visas. They revoked army officers' visas. That is when they started to get things together and say, hey, we might as well make it appear that these structures were working, because the international community were after them. They knew it, but the international community, for the most part, we're seeing they're silent at this point in time. Here is where we'll bring in Mr. Tom Anderson. Why do you think they're silent at this time, Mr. Anderson?
That's
Why?
an easy answer, Mark. It's so easy, man. Don't get so frustrated, okay? Don't get so frustrated. Look, it's so simple. I'm going to say it again about politics, okay? Politicians want to be a part of something that wins. They don't want to be with something that loses, okay? And so the reason why the international community is silent is because they don't know who to partner with in Guyana for a win. It's really that simple. They don't know who to partner with in Guyana for a win. And so until they find someone they can partner with in Guyana for a win, or some government agency or some leadership where they can partner and come out looking good and know they're going to come out looking good, they're going to stay silent, Mark, and you're just going to have to be patient. Now, with that said, look, you're putting a lot of pressure on them. I'm telling you, you are. Whenever you get on your radio and you talk about your radio show and you talk about this, it's putting a lot of pressure. Vice News put a huge amount of pressure on them. So the pressure is being applied, Mark, okay? It doesn't seem like it, but it is, and you have to be patient. And I have to tell you, right? Silence isn't always a good thing if you're the PPP, because look, they want to look good too. They want to get away from this. They want to go out there and show everyone that they're doing great things. And right now they're stuck because no one in the international community wants to stand with them on anything. And so there's silence across the board. So it doesn't work for anybody. So I just think, Mark, be patient. The pressure is there. They're going to have to look, the ball is in their court, like as we say here in the States, okay? When the other side has the ball, it's their turn to move. The PPP has to make a move now. The government in Guyana, the local government, like Mr. Solomon said, has to make a move now. They have to do something that is going to be legitimate, and you just have to be patient. But I truly believe it's going to happen, and happen pretty soon, in my opinion.
Got you. Thank you so much. Now, let me give back Mr. Solomon his minute that I... Mr. Solomon, I understand your point, and you know we've been in this trouble for a while.
Mark, I am saying this, that not unless Guyanese are prepared to take the necessary actions on behalf of Guyanese and Guyana, this is an oil-producing nation. We can look at the international arena. Biden's doctrine is to ensure that you have democratic structures that represent human rights and human rights interests. That's part of his doctrine. But that doesn't make, because of the international situation, Biden not prepared to engage Venezuela or engage China or engage others because of what the international dynamics hold. The international community will act. They have their concerns and consideration. We in Guyana have to take action. We have to ensure that the parliament works. You cannot say parliamentarians, because the speaker is batting for the other side, should not turn up in parliament, and hold them accountable. Of course, a better job, and I believe everyone could appreciate that, could and must be done. Likewise, we cannot just turn our backs and say that the Guyana police force in totality is unable to guard us from all ills in this state. We must be able to say that a culture within those institutions must be established based on us ensuring that the structures work, whether they have to follow the policies or the SOPs, that we hold them accountable, rules of engagement. You could not kill Quindon Bacchus. You could not kill Orin Boston. You could not kill the three Linden martyrs if you were following the SOPs. And if you don't, you will be held accountable and prosecuted, as we see. But we have to hold our institution. We are now going to the judiciary, and we're looking carefully at these constitutional cases that are being taken before them. And it is showing that those institutions, if given the opportunity to work, and we hold accountable them by taking a year and a half, no case was taken before the judiciary, except for the Christopher Jones human rights violation issue. And it came out that those are matters that the government continues to violate. You have to take them before the court. They violate the 8 parliamentarians' right. Today, they're taken before the court. And kudos to Risedale Ford. He must be commended because he's doing an excellent job. But we have to test those institutions, man. We have to.
Can I get a quick minute now?
You can, man.
Under a real democracy, those institutions will become functional on behalf of the Guyanese people. For 23 years, we saw those institutions have become corrupt under the PPP regime. We saw an opportunity over the 5 years of the coalition rulership. We saw that those institutions were beginning to come back into the realm of being democratic.
Which means
Again, we see that these institutions are becoming corrupt because under the PPP regime, they don't believe in these institutions. They don't believe in democracy. They want to control these institutions and put puppets, the police force, SOCU, and all these other agencies. They want people they can control. And once they control these agencies, the agencies will not work on behalf of the Guyanese people. And so for you to say, I again agree, yes, we need to test the agencies, but not under the PPP regime. The agencies do not work under the PPP regime. You know what make the PPP regime moves? Protest. Solid protest in the streets. We saw that in 1997. And once people hit to the streets, they need to get the support of the international community because majority of the people in the international community, they know that the PPP is corrupt. They know that all level of allegations against Jack Dale in terms of bribery and all manner of fraud and corruption and so forth, they're aware of these things. And so the international community needs to support the ordinary people and some folks in the opposition who are brave enough not just to walk into the clerk's office of the National Assembly and say, we are requesting an investigation. It is not going to happen. Take 10,000 people onto the streets. Do like what the Surinamese are doing. It's part of their democratic rights, their constitutional rights. Look at what the Sri Lankans did. So are we going to just sit down and say, in your words, Mr. Solomon, let us test the institution?
Mark, you know that's not what I'm saying. And you and I know we approach this in a dual position. In 2012, you and I know about taking people to the streets, and you and I know about taking our case.
Mr. Solomon,
Mr. Solomon,
Mr. Solomon, my intention was never to hurt your feelings, sir. So don't get it that way.
I hear that.
We're on the same path.
You and I both know that dual approach must never be taken off the table because we know that taking your matter to the State Department, we met with officials there, we met with officials in New York, we know the international community must be involved, but we know it's also important to get local pressure on those structures, man.
Got you. Mr. Anderson, before we move on to any other subject, I saw you smiling there because you figure out that Sharma and I are in a boxing ring if we were close to each other. No, it's not like that. But
It's fun looking at you guys go at it. But look, here's the thing about democracies, Mark. You know, they're always in like a state of flux. There's always a little give and take between the people and the government, and that give and take, it's like a pendulum. It can swing from one side to the next and be very extreme. And so, with that said, since most democracies kind of fluctuate, I think with what's going on with the Vice News report, I think it's smart right now to keep your powder dry, as my former mentor taught me. Sometimes, you know, it's smart to just sit back and force the other side to make a move first, right? I think this might be the time for that, in my opinion. And I'd say that because I really do believe you want that Vice News report to really sink in. It hasn't totally sunk in yet in the international community. I'm telling you, it hasn't. It needs to fully sink in, especially when the people involved in some of the videotape recordings are going out there internationally and they're asking for things from other world leaders. The answer is going to be no to them until something happens here. So I think, you know, here's the thing about protests in the streets. They are very effective. They have to be done the right way. And I would just say this: it opens the door for the PPP to create a distraction, to get people's attention away from what's going on with this Vice News report and the corruption that appears to be happening, and puts it towards something else like, oh, these people are rioting, or there's people are out of control, you know, anything like that. Don't give them an excuse. I think right now there's a lot of pressure on them, believe it or not. It's behind the scenes. And I think they're going to have to make a move soon. I think it's time to be patient and it's time to be smart. And just, I think Mr. Solomon is correct. These local institutions need to be given an opportunity. They need to be tested. They need to be given an opportunity to step up to the plate and get something done here. I think that's the right move first, in my opinion.
all right. I'm outnumbered here tonight. Maybe I should get somebody else to come on. And who can I get? Maybe J.R. Crawford. Let's get him quickly. Mr. Solomon, there are other issues, and Mr. Thomas Anderson, there are other issues that we want to touch on. Tom, you have dealt with this on many occasions, and we're seeing a lot of things coming to pass now. Your words, sugar, we produce sugar, but sugar price gone up sky high. Lots of problems with sugar. People are joining lines now for sugar, something that is produced in Guyana, and lots of other things. Are you surprised? Let's begin with Mr. Anderson, that in a country that produces sugar, that people have to take a look at the line. People are lining up now in Guyana for sugar.
Yeah. Well, did you see that Ukraine and Russia signed a UN agreement to ship grain out of the Black Sea? Did you see that happen?
Yeah.
The reason why that happened is because, like I said months ago, that war is going. Look, when it first started, people in Russia were in lines for sugar. Okay, and so think about it. If Russia has a connection to Guyana and the PPP, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be saying to them, "Hey, we need your sugar because our people need the sugar." Right?
So wait a minute, Tom. You're onto something. I wonder if we find out, and Mr. Solomon, that the PPP is actually secretly shipping sugar to Russia. Continue.
Well, what I was saying months ago was people need to pay attention to the PPP government and what they're doing with food supply controls, because when you know the world is going to be looking for a lot of food because there's a war happening and food needs to come from somewhere else to plug the hole happening where the war is occurring, well, then you know as a government, you need to start putting policies in place to protect your national food supply. Why? Because the people that are growing crops right now in Guyana, the private and even government now, they're being offered huge sums of money for what they're growing, much more than what the people of Guyana pay for, okay? And so what you have is if the government doesn't step in and say, hey, you can only sell a certain percentage of your crop to overseas purchasers, then what could happen is everything that's grown could be sold. And then people in Guyana are left with nothing. So I was saying months ago, people need to pay attention to this, because if the government doesn't put some policies in place to protect the domestic food supply, you will see sugar disappear. You will see other food staples disappear that you would think should be there. No, they've been sold to other places for a huge profit.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's why I stopped you in the midst of your point. That is it a case where the PPP is secretly shipping Guyana sugar to Russia? That's just a question. Maybe the PPP can answer that, or maybe we can find some evidence if there exists and prove it to the Guyanese people that the PPP is secretly shipping out stuff out of Guyana to deliberately starve Guyanese people. I don't know. It's just what we have to think. But before we move on to Mr. Solomon,
Mark, can I want to say one thing real quick? Though?
Sure, Tom.
What will happen is this: if I don't know if the government even knows what's really being grown in Guyana. I don't know. I don't know if they know how much is being exported. Truly, I don't know if they have any wherewithal about that. So this is a situation where they could just with chasing profits, sell everything and not know that they sold everything. Yeah, that's the problem here, right? So I think that's the bigger problem. I think there might be a problem of, I don't think they know what's in the country, and so that I think it could all disappear without them even realizing. That's how bad it is. That's worse than selling it off on purpose, in my opinion.
It's very, very bad. Worse than we even think and we can imagine. But before we go to Mr. Sharma Solomon, I know he wants to make a point, and rightly so. Sorry about that. So here it is. I have at least one support here, and I deliberately Commissioner Nicole Cole out in Guyana, who has been on the streets fighting for a long time. She has been fighting. She has been testing these institutions in Guyana, all of the institutions, whether it's child rights abuses, and gosh, there has been so many young children who have been abused sexually or otherwise, and the institutions have failed those young people, failed our young people. Who knows it best? Nicole Cole. Here she is, and this is what she's saying. Patience is good, Mr. Anderson. She should have put and Mr. Solomon. But there is a limit to sitting and waiting for the tide to rise. Sometimes you've got to take the bulls by the horn and be proactive. I just thought I share that comment. I'm not going to give you guys an opportunity to say anything. Just thought I share it and see the smile on your face right now.
Well, I'll say about fishing, though.
Sure.
It's very good to sit and wait for the tide to come in, because trust me, that's when you get the biggest fish. I'm just saying.
I know, but that's for fish.
Mark, as a Muslim, I believe patience comes with steadfastness. So patience don't mean sitting idle with your hands on your butt. It means
we will forget about that matter.
It means you're steadfast in what you're doing. But let's get to the joke. I really want to touch the issue of Gaisuko.
Before you get to Gaisuko, are you surprised at all the cost of living? We see sugar, the price of sugar. People, Mr. Solomon, look at what's happening. Under the Burnham, they used to laugh and say, President Burnham, they used to join line for this and that. But look, Burnham died so many years ago. Under the PPP, this is happening now. Lines upon lines for sugar and, of course, other items. Are you surprised, sir? Solomon?
Absolutely not, Mark. And you may jokingly say that we're giving away our resources. Well, we have no less than the Barbadian experience about giving lands away, and all what we are doing for the agricultural development for another state, while we are bulldozing people in our own land, farms that is with food on it. But that's another story. I think the issue of Gaisuko, however, Mark, is fundamentally the handling of this government by Gaisuko. One can't forget investments like Skeldon, the promises of reopening every estate. Only today, in the last 24 hours, Gaisuko received $2 billion further in the supplemental budget that that Ashni Singh asked Parliament to release, $2 billion. We have seen the packaging plant and more being sold out, and this is the sort of management. So even though world prices and the supply chain and all the other factors of the war and the COVID and everything have disrupted and caused food to surge to some extent, you cannot take away the mismanagement of Gaisuko fundamentally by the People's Progressive Party in the government and what they've made Gaisuko into, what they've made sugar workers into, mandicans. They've made them into a situation where even the nation have now seen the burden that the government have placed on them by Gaisuko, to the consequence that we have to line up for sugar and pay twice the amount for sugar. So I think it is clear that comes straight into the issue of cost of living. If there is any rallying cry mark outside of the issue of corruption, this government took a 4 billion supplemental in the past 24 hours. Cost of living. Every area except for public servants were addressed in that supplemental budget. Infrastructure, where they do the most corrupt bidding, as we heard in the Vice News, in terms of money laundering for infrastructural projects, got the most money. Are we going to eat roads? Are we going to eat bridges? While the cost of living is surging. So if there is a common issue that you're talking about, a rallying cry, which was even done by the International Republican Institution as part of their survey of the most important issue affecting Guyanese, is bread and butter. What did the Minister of Labor said about it? And this is in reference to those public servants. Listen to Labor Day. The Minister of Labor said that to talk about the issue of wages and salaries makes you antiquated, makes you outdated. You are speaking about wages and salaries, which is fundamentally a bread and butter issue. And this is what the Minister of Labor is going to say to teachers, to nurses, who are seeing prices like sugar and so many commodities skyrocket in this island gas nation. Can't afford it, haven't been considering a supplemental for it. And you are telling me that even whether you live in Canal Number 1, Linden, Berbice, Essequibo, across the board, that is the rallying cry for Guyanese. That cost of living is a burden and it's killing them. I believe that needs to be better articulated. I believe that is a matter that you can generate this sort of national interest in, and you can bring people to understand that it cuts across their politics, their race, and the differences. If you can't put food on the table, your children will go to bed hungry. Story done. You have to let Guyanese know that. And it is unfair based on the way this government is handling the economy.
All right, Sharma Solomon there, words of wisdom, in fact. And just let us have Mr. Anderson know when a Guyanese says story done, it means don't come back, don't say nothing else. It's done, story done, right? Story done. Your take on what's going to happen to Guyana, Mr. Solomon? You have been talking, Mr. Anderson, you've been talking about this. A lot of Guyanese probably, maybe some of our listeners say, that's not true. Guyana get lots of foods, lots of everything. But we are seeing the signs. The signs are there right now. Sugar and all other things, cost of living gone right up. It's going to get worse, you think?
Yes. So whenever you're dealing with inflation, well, I can speak on our end in the United States. And what happens here ends up trickling down to everyone else, to you. So we're probably going to see inflation for the next decade here. That's just the truth. All right. So if we're going to see inflation for the next decade, then how is that going to filter down to people in Guyana? You could see a currency problem in Guyana. You could see definitely food problems. See a lot of chaos going on because, and this is why I say we're going to have 10 years of inflation here. For us, you know, when you're talking about inflation, it's like if I can tell your audience, imagine a tub of water, and there's a certain amount of money. That's the water. Imagine a tub, and instead of water going in, you have money going in. You have all this money going in, And what happens is if the money doesn't go out at the same rate that it's coming in, you get inflation. That's what's happening. So with our system, we can't correct our bathtub. We can't get the money out as fast as it's coming in for at least another 10 years. That's how big of a problem it is for us. So, you know, when you hear, even people here in the United States, they hear our president saying, "Oh, don't believe the inflation. It's going to be gone tomorrow." He doesn't. His people aren't. You know, President Biden, his people aren't telling him the reality, the truth. The truth is we're going to see inflation at least here for at least a decade, and that means for people in Guyana, the truth is you're gonna have problems with your currency. You're gonna have problems with your food supply. It will get dicey, unfortunately for you. You're looking ahead to some rough, hard times. And so I've said months now, be prepared, be smart, save, buckle down, get ready for a long winter, because I'm telling you, you can see it coming. It's coming, and it's going to come harshly, unfortunately, but that's just the truth.
It's just the truth, the reality. 56 minutes after 9 o'clock, we may very well see lines at gas stations and all manner of things. We will see lines at the grocery stores, lines at the supermarkets, lines at border, lines all over.
Yep.
All over indeed, and that's just what it is. Meanwhile, these folks promised, Irfan Ali promised 50,000 jobs. Mr. Solomon, you being a former chairman of Region 10, what's happening in Region 10? Linden, Ituni, Kokwani, Old England, and other places. Are you seeing those jobs, signs of jobs being created by the government?
Absolutely not, Mark. And this is not in terms of creation of jobs. This is even improvement in what people already have. And we come right back to the issue of cost of living. What you see, we'll start with the government marginalization of distribution of resources is not equal in equity in terms of what you see occurring for other parts of Guyana. You know, whether it's the distribution of cash resources and grants for business, it's not the same you see for other parts of the country. So that in itself is a signal. Absolutely not. When you see the treatment of infrastructure, and as the regional chairman would usually point out, the many, and this is the current regional chairman, Deran Adams, would point out the mistreatment of whether it's the hospital, of staffers who were replaced by the NDMA, of the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. We have lost more jobs in this region than the government is attempting to replace with those temporary jobs. That if public servants understood their values, would see this as an ultimate disrespect, that they're paying all of the taxes, making under $100,000, working 30 days, and people who are working far less 10 days are making almost twice as much as they are. This is the sort of disrespect that a government is actually inducing, and this is the sort of culture. Again, when you interfere with structures the way you see the government is at the moment, the culture that develops within these bureaucratic institutions is one where you see people are either prepared to leave Guyana or they're not given the sort of service we expect of them because they're undervalued. So Linden and Region 10 is with a lot of issues that this government continues to perpetrate because of who we are. A week ago, last Monday, we celebrated 10 years of a massacre because of that sort of behavior of the government, of marginalization, of imposition, of situation that places further economic burden on our community. And today, 10 years on, it continues. So absolutely not, Mark. There's no change.
No change at all. Bara Jagdeo stepped into Region 10, stepped into Linden, and tried to fool the people. He spoke about part-time jobs, forgetting that they have promised 50,000 jobs. This, Mr. Sharma, reminds me of when Donald Ramotar was in Linden in 2011, and promised the people maybe 7 or 8,000 jobs. The people are still waiting for even 7 jobs. But what the
Yeah.
PPP did then under Donald Ramatar, instead of giving them jobs, under his regime, the police give the people pellet bullets, real bullets, and 3 caskets to bury 3 Londoners. That is the history. That is the track record of the PPP. So when they talk about 50,000 jobs, it's all fake. It's all a fraud. When they talk about going into communities, whether it's Linden, and I've heard this argument that the opposition folks are jealous and vexed because the PPP is not going into these communities or these regions with any good intention, none whatsoever. And we all know this. But let me give you guys, we're looking at the time. I know it's Friday night. Let me give you guys an opportunity to say something to our listeners in your closing remarks. We'll start first, we'll leave our guests for last. That is Tom Anderson. We'll go to you, Mr. Solomon, former chairman of Region 10.
Yeah, Mark, these programs are very important. I see the government, through some of its surrogates, are now engaged in many of these online programs. Information is power. I believe that is where we start with the empowerment of the Guyanese masses. We have to continue to inform them. And we have to let them know the ability that they have to hold accountable for us, as I keep saying, our domestic issues. We have to take charge of that. That is where it starts. There are many rallying areas for us to do so, whether it's corruption, whether it's poor governance, and we know the importance of good governance by itself is a major issue because it involves the issue of rights and human rights violations and all the things that the government is doing, whether it's cost of living. So I believe information becomes critical because it does a very important thing. In fact, too, it helps you to aggregate the issues that people are mostly affected by. And once aggregated, it helps you to articulate clearly how they can deal with those issues so they can take the necessary actions. And I believe that is where the opposition need to understand the People's Progressive Party by itself is creating enough damage without even the sort of pressure. And I believe with a united approach, the PPP have never felt threatened by a single approach. They've always been defeated and felt very threatened when there is unity in approach. And I believe once you have a united approach, it makes easier the articulation of those matters so that we can have people to appreciate you should not be sending your children to bed hungry in an oil and gas economy. We have to be able to tell people how to take action against things like that.
Well said. Words of wisdom. Sharma Solomon there for us. We'll go over to Mr. Thomas Anderson for his closing remarks. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier, and good evening, everyone. Good evening. I really appreciate the opportunity again, Mark, and really enjoy coming on with Mr. Solomon, one of my favorite people on this planet. I don't know if he knows that, but you are. With that said, look, everyone needs to realize all politics are local. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, all politics are local. So that means that the people truly have the power once they realize that the national government will always reflect whatever the local government wants. That's the way it works. The national government, basically the top side, the top guys are the tail, and the local government is the dog. And what's happening with Guyana is the tail is wagging the dog, and it should be the other way around. And so Mr. Solomon is correct. The people have to realize and have to put their attention on local level. Seriously, because that's how the country will change for the better, is when the local level is fixed through the people and through the representatives. That should be the focus, and that's my advice going forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Sharma Solomon as well. Tom, when we're off on this program, I'll give you a call. Hope you got some sugar, send some half a pound of sugar or something for us, man, because the people in Guyana are starving under the PPP regime. And it's no joke, Sharma. We see, and Mr. Anderson, we see, and even the PPP stronghold areas, they're protesting. They are fighting up. They're not getting anything. They see that this regime is incompetent. One such area, a gentleman, I believe, Kadaki, drove through an area today, and the people, their PPP supporters, they were running. They didn't want to be seen. They were fighting up for their roads to be built, their streets to be built. The same thing happening throughout the country. They're joining long lines for food items, not just sugar. It's going to stretch. It's going to get longer and longer, as you have predicted months ago on this show, Mr. Anderson. We've got to pray for the people of Guyana. We've got to pray for all of them. But as usual, I thank you both for taking time out your busy schedule, being here to talk with us and to even talk. And we agree on a lot of things. We disagree on just one thing this evening. That is to allow those rotten ropes institutions to do what only God knows. But I understand that institutions should be given a chance in order to prove that they haven't done anything. And then maybe the next step will be mass protest. Sharma, thank you so much. Tom, thank you so much. God bless you both.
Good evening. God bless.
Well, I have nothing else to say other than continue keeping hope alive. 8 members of parliament have been suspended. I don't know why they have been suspended. I don't know why the others who haven't been suspended didn't walk out of parliament. Look, you've got to take drastic actions against the PPP, you know. You've got to. Drastic constitutional action, mind you. Drastic lawful actions against the PPP. As the late John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis said, good trouble. Now is the right time for good trouble. The PPP back is against the wall. They are on the ropes right now. They are begging Sarah and others to rescue them. We can't allow Sarah to rush and rescue them, you know. The PPP is injured. Most of the injuries happen to be self-inflicted. We can't allow them to get up. We can't allow them to bounce back up. They've got to stay down, and we've got to defeat them. They are bad news for Guyana. They have no vision. They have no policy. They have nothing that is good, nothing that is beneficial for the Guyanese people. And that includes their own support base. They don't care about them. And look at the $3 billion that they pushed into the sugar industry today. They did that as a form of, what is it? Package compensation. The $3 billion, majority of that money is not going to go to the sugar workers. The sugar workers' families wouldn't get it. You know where it's going? It's going to the fat cats, the big fat cats in the PPP. The big fat cats like these incompetent turnaround experts. These incompetent individuals. Sesnarain Singh is just one of them.
They give you, they expect gratefulness from you. And this is what President Pierre Fanali got to face from y'all. You know, they used to call Moses Nagamutu Nimakaram. I never said that. I said they used to call Moses Nagamutu Nimakaram. Because when the PPP made him, that's when he stopped the freaking PPP.
So that Nimakaram, that Katahar, that Korhi feels that he can talk to those sugar workers and that they can condemn Ramjatan, right? And Moses Nagamutu and so forth and so on. And that's going to make Sesnarain Singh feel nice in the eyes of Jack Deo and Irfan that look, Sesnarain is attacking Ramjatan, and Nagamutu and so forth. So basically, he's singing for his own supper. He's incompetent. He's a waste of time. He's a kunumunu. He is wasting taxpayers' monies. $3 billion today. You know where that $3 billion is going? It's going all over, but it's not going to help the sugar workers. Less than 1 month from today, you're going to see, or by next week, you're going to see Jack Deere rushing up to the quarantine, rushing and talk with sugar workers and giving them more monies upon more monies. That is what they're doing. Hardworking taxpayers' money being wasted by these corrupt individuals in high offices under the PPP regime. It has got to stop. But we've been saying it's got to stop. How is it going to stop? By sitting down and presenting some motion and asking an incompetent parliament headed by mainly incompetent, corrupt individuals to conduct any form of investigation about corruption? Do you expect the majority of them in parliament to say, yes, they're going to debate on corruption? They're not going to debate on corruption. Whether it is Schuman, by the way, Schuman resurrected. I don't know where he came out from or whatever, but he is resurrected, right? To talk and to support those 8 parliamentarians who have been suspended. He resurrected. I don't know where he came out from, but he resurrected, right? I haven't heard any sort of allegations about Schuman in a while. It means that he must be behaving himself, right? Because you guys know what he's the allegations that he's basically notorious on. I'm not going to get in that. Like I said, allegations, mind you, that he likes to run after. Just allegations, right? Let me see what else is there we can discuss before we go. Nothing else. Just allegations, mind you, Schuman. I'm not saying you're guilty of anything. Allegations. And some people remember Schuman run in front of police station, naked skin on. Allegations, right? Little girls, allegations, right? Nothing truthful about that has been proven. Just allegations. But yet Schuman popped out of some little crease and supports the PPP in suspending those 8 parliamentarians. Politics, huh? Dirty politics by these visionless kunumunu. Lots of them. We're tired of them. Sick of them. God damn it. To end on a good note, let's do some math this evening. Then again, let's not do any math. Because the math that we are going to do will prove that the PPP is stealing lots and lots of money. We're not going to do the math. You're just not going to do the math. We're not going to do the math. Have a great evening. I'll see you guys soon. God bless you all. Pray for Guyana. Pray for all those people in those long lines. My heart goes out to them. All of the people. God bless you.
Pressure boss pipe. Pressure boss pipe, boy. Umaninza, Guyana de underwater. Oh, the wrong. Sorry. Umaninza, Guyana de under pressure. Walk. Bangamere is $400 pong. Trout $400 pong. Oh, you go buy that will sell back by. I just come and tell about bisa buy me little fish and mix with me little crab and sell. Thing that just raise, thing just double the price, just double. Oh, bad no. What you could do now? You don't squeeze out the juice for the Guyanese people. The beer hawks left, what you gonna do with the orange? We can't eat the fucking hawks that guy. Pressure bus pipe, partner, pressure bus pipe. When you put up a fucking 20,000 this week, next week you put up a 10,000, other week you put up a fucking 15,000 end of the month, you gotta still borrow 20,000, but somebody will pay the bill.
Making the short video for send to you and the viewers and listeners. I'll know we punishing in Guyana. Punishing. Rice gone up, sugar gone up, flour gone up, cost of living just gone up, gas gone up from 3,400 to 3,800. Real hungry days under this installed PPP government. Real hungry days we gone back to.
Right about now, living in Guyana right about now, I am in Guyana no more. I think I will go and get me visa and I go fly out and I go to Mormis and I go relax myself because I am in Guyana no more. I am in Guyana. I gotta go Mormis.
Maybe the Chinese company that did not get the agreement that they wanted here, maybe they're the ones who told you, or it could be just a fictitious thing.
Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Su Jerome?
Su.
Pressure, boss fight.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington law firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.